The void had a weight to it. Not the crushing kind that bends bone, but the kind that presses against your thoughts, seeping into the edges of consciousness. Lieutenant Kiro'Nath felt it through the soles of his boots, though the ship's deck was sealed, inert, and artificial. Here in Frontier Zone Delta 9, an uncharted sprawl at the galaxy's edge, everything was quiet. So quiet that the hum of the patrol frigate Auriga sounded like a tempest. Every system beep, every thrumming pulse of energy from the engines felt unnaturally loud. And that quiet, it felt like it was waiting. Kiro'Nath leaned over the railing of the bridge observation bay. His visor reflected streaks of distant starlight, scattering across his pale, sharp face. In that reflection, he saw the weight of responsibility and the brimming uncertainty in the crew behind him. They were young, most of them fresh from the academy or transferred from civil defense units. Now here they were, at the far edge of human-influenced space, assigned to patrol nothing and watch everything. It was a thankless, lonely job, a test of patience more than skill. But Kiro'Nath knew that out here, patience could be the difference between a routine patrol and a final log entry. The silence was the real enemy, the constant companion that wore you down. "Sir," whispered Ensign Daly from the sensor console. His voice was a crackle in the oppressive stillness. "I'm picking up a mass anomaly." Kiro'Nath stiffened. His mind raced. The frontier had its oddities, rogue comets, derelict stations, but anomalies of this magnitude were rare, almost unheard of. "Location?" he asked, his voice low, measured, betraying none of the sudden tension that coiled in his gut. The hum of the ship swallowed any trace of excitement, leaving the air sharp and brittle. "Sector 702, approaching at... It's moving." Daly's hands hovered over the controls, betraying a tremor he did not acknowledge aloud. "Moving?" Kiro'Nath echoed, walking toward the console. "Nothing out here moves without notice. Not like this." The main observation screen flickered. At first, it was just a smudge of reflected starlight, drifting lazily against the dark backdrop of unclaimed space. Then the smudge shifted, subtly, unnaturally. A shimmer, a ripple in the sensor feed, made Kiro'Nath's stomach tighten. This wasn't a natural object, this wasn't a glitch. "It can't be. It's..." Daly faltered, his words lost in disbelief. Kiro'Nath pressed his palms against the cool surface of the console. His eyes narrowed, trying to resolve the image. "It's too large. Way too large. It's not a rock. It's not a comet." He swallowed, his throat suddenly dry. "Scan frequency Delta 4. Cross-reference gravimetric readings. LYS, I want every bit of data we have on that thing now." Minutes passed, stretching into an eternity. The crew was silent, a collective of held breaths. The only sounds were the occasional beep from a console or the soft murmur of calculation from LYS, their AI assistant. Outside, the anomaly drifted closer. The darkness seemed to swallow it, and the bridge felt suddenly fragile, as if one wrong move might fracture it into nothing. Kiro'Nath's pulse thrummed like a low drumbeat in his ears. Every instinct he had, honed by years in the service, screamed that they were looking at something impossible, something legendary. And then it moved. Not a subtle shift, not a drift. Movement with purpose. The smudge elongated, shadows shifted across angular surfaces, metallic edges gleaming faintly under the distant starlight. It was a structure, deliberate, artificial. It's a ship," Kiro'Nath said, disbelief threading through the words. The bridge was silent, the crew frozen in a state of collective awe. The anomaly's size was staggering, eclipsing their frigate by unimaginable orders of magnitude. The curvature of its hull reflected entire star clusters like a distorted mirror, but a mirror that seemed alive. There was intent in its movement, a slow, deliberate precision that made Kiro'Nath's chest tighten with fear and something else entirely. Reverence. He felt it in his gut first, a deep, primal recognition. This was humanity. He knew it before the sensors could confirm it. Every Terran pilot who had ever stared into the darkness of space felt the same instinctive connection. The shape, the design language, the silent promise of resolve etched into its very form. Daly's voice was a barely audible whisper. "Sir, it's a dreadnought." The word hovered in the air like a forbidden prayer. Dreadnoughts were the stuff of legends, relics from a bygone era of total war, titans of the fleet that were believed to be decommissioned or lost forever. To see one here in the empty frontier was like finding a ghost. Kiro'Nath felt a chill run down his spine, not from cold, but from the immense weight of history about to breathe down their necks. The dreadnought moved closer, turning slowly to align its hull with their tiny frigate. The bridge lights of the Auriga dimmed automatically, compensating for the sheer immensity of the vessel that now blocked out the stars. Its size defied understanding, but it was the details that made Kiro'Nath's breath catch in his throat. Small symbols, insignias of the old Terran Federation, were etched into its armor, faded but unmistakable, panels that shimmered like liquid metal, and somewhere deep inside that colossal structure there were humans. A low hum vibrated through the Auriga's deck plates, faint but undeniable, a resonance of immense energy that spoke of power beyond their comprehension. This vessel could have ended them with a single thought, a flicker of its weapon systems. And yet, here it was, moving with a quiet, almost gentle restraint. Kiro'Nath swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. The patrol frigate suddenly felt insignificant, a fragile toy floating beside a giant. Yet at the same time it felt alive with potential. They were the first to witness this. He remembered what his father, a veteran of the Outer Rim conflicts, had told him before he left for the academy. Courage isn't to facing what you fear. It's acting wisely when fear is your shadow. The words echoed in his mind, a guiding principle in this moment of overwhelming uncertainty. Kiro'Nath straightened his shoulders, his hands gripping the console with newfound resolve. His fear was still there, a cold presence at the back of his mind, but it was no longer in control. "Keep scanners active," he commanded, his voice steady and clear, cutting through the silence. "Maintain our course. No sudden moves, no hails, not yet." He looked at his crew, their faces pale in the dim light but their eyes fixed on him, waiting. "We are observers. Let's see what history has to say." They were a tiny patrol ship at the edge of the galaxy, staring into the face of a legend. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet of space was filled not with emptiness, but with the promise of a story about to unfold. Daly nodded, his face pale, but every soul on that bridge knew the unspoken rule of survival. Humans were exceptional, but even we respected the sheer scale of what we were up against. The minutes stretched out like hours. The dreadnought drifted silently into the patrol zone, a colossal shadow that eclipsed the stars behind it. My mind, Kiro'Nath's mind, was racing. I ran through every possible scenario. Defensive protocols, escape vectors, all the emergency measures in the book, but none of them seemed adequate, and strangely none of them seemed necessary. The vessel wasn't threatening us, it was just observing. And then, it spoke. Not with weapons or energy blasts like we'd expect. No electronic assault, no hostile signals. Instead, the Auriga's comm panel just lit up. A message appeared in text. It was flawless, deliberate, and its precision felt almost alien to our eyes. It read, "Do not fear. We remember peace." I froze. My own pulse roared in my ears. Peace, not war, not judgment or conquest. Just peace. The bridge fell into a stunned silence. We all looked at each other, searching for an understanding that those simple words couldn't fully convey. And in that moment I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in years out here on the frontier. Awe. Humans had become a myth, a story whispered across the vastness of space. And here they were, returning silently, resolutely. Not for vengeance, but for remembrance, somewhere deep inside me. A small, almost forgotten part, the part that still hoped, that still prayed, sensed the quiet presence of something greater. It wasn't an answer or a command. but it was a hint of order in the chaos, a subtle reassurance that this encounter was not random. The dreadnought drifted closer, its immense shadow now completely filling our observation viewport. And for the first time, I realized the galaxy itself had paused. The silence had weight. History had stopped breathing. And in that pause, I finally understood the truth of the frontier. Power wasn't measured by firepower or destruction. True strength was in restraint. My hand hovered over the intercom. I wanted to speak, to respond, to do something, but any words felt completely inadequate. So I did the only thing left to do. I watched. And somewhere in the dark, the humans began to pray. The dreadnought didn't move aggressively. It just hovered there, colossal and unreadable, a silent sentinel in the void. Yet the weight of its presence was tangible. You could feel it pressing through the Auriga S hull and right into the nerves of everyone aboard. As Lieutenant Kiro'Nath, I felt it like a deep, resonant pulse that unsettled the air and the mind. Every single one of my instincts screamed caution, but a subtler, more human instinct whispered a single word: wonder. I turned away from the viewport to look at my crew on the bridge. They were a mixture of awe, fear, and sheer disbelief. Ensign Daly's hands were hovering just above the sensor panel, his knuckles white. Gunnery Chief Riza leaned against his console, jaw tight, his eyes locked on the endless darkness outside. Even Lieutenant Commander Sarn, who was usually our stoic anchor, had a tightness in her shoulders that betrayed the same trembling I felt inside. "Keep calm," I muttered, though my voice sounded fragile even to my own ears. No sudden movements, no reactions they could misinterpret. Just observe. "Sir," Daly's voice was barely a whisper. "Earlier, the hull, it's moving in ways that, it's not just floating, it's alive. Or it seems alive." I swallowed hard. Alive. The word was instinctively, terrifyingly correct. The dreadnought's surface shimmered with a subtle light, its panels shifting in ways that were almost imperceptible. It radiated intelligence, not aggression, yet every little flicker of its metal skin suggested an awareness far beyond what our sensors could comprehend. I activated the long-range scanning protocol, my fingers moving with practiced precision. The Auriga's AI LYS hummed to life, running calculations against every known material signature, every propulsion system ever recorded in human databases, every engineering manual we had. Nothing matched. Not even the wild rumors whispered among old veterans. Not even the theoretical concepts discussed in academic circles. My heart thudded in my chest. I was staring at a ship built by humans, by Terrans, but it was a vessel that seemed to have leaped decades, maybe even centuries, ahead in technology. Its design was elegant and terrifyingly meticulous. A human mind had created this, but it was a mind beyond any I knew. "Sir," Daly said again, his voice pulling me from my thoughts. "There's a subspace pulse. It's repeating." I straightened up. Subspace pulses weren't just for communication, they were signatures of intent, directional and precise. They could disrupt systems, scramble sensors, or convey information. But this pulse, it was different. It was measured. Gentle, almost deliberate, like a handshake being offered across the void. I felt that familiar tension rising inside me. Curiosity, caution, and the faint stirrings of awe, all at once. The choice before me was unnerving. Should I respond, or should I just continue our silent observation? The protocols were clear. Maintain position, avoid confrontation, report the anomaly. But none of those rules had ever prepared me for this. "Open a channel," I said finally, my voice firm but steady. "Use the standard hailing frequency first. No translation. Let them speak first." "Sir, are you sure?" Daly asked, glancing nervously at the monstrous silhouette hanging in the viewport. "I'm sure," I replied. My pulse was racing, but I masked it with a practiced calm. This is the frontier, and sometimes frontiers are made by daring to see what others fear. The hailing tone rippled out across the void. I felt it reverberate through the Auriga's hull, almost as if the dreadnought was listening, considering its reply. Seconds stretched into minutes. Every heartbeat on the bridge felt amplified, every exhale deliberate and loud. Then faintly at first, a voice. It wasn't harsh or mechanical. It was smooth, almost musical, but undeniably human. And yet it was strange. The cadence was precise, clear, and felt alien, like a language designed to be understood by more than just human ears. Lieutenant Kiro'Nath, you have ventured far. We see you. Remain. You are safe. The entire bridge froze. I felt a tremor run through me, but it wasn't from fear. It was something deeper, disbelief, hope, and the sudden realization that humans could still act with such purpose across the galaxy. The words were calm, controlled, almost fatherly, and yet, embedded within them was a subtle, unmistakable assertion of power. They could destroy us in a single breath. They were choosing not to. A shiver ran down my spine, and it wasn't from the cold of space. Somewhere deep within me, the quietest part of my soul, the part that still prayed, that still believed in something greater, whispered, "This is not luck. This isn't chance. Someone wanted me to witness this." "Status?" I asked, breaking the brief, heavy silence. The sensors reported minor fluctuations in the local gravitational fields, thermal signatures inconsistent with any known engine type, and a faint, almost imperceptible aura of radiation. It was harmless, but utterly alien. Daly's eyes widened as he scanned the readouts. "Sir, I don't know how to explain this. The ship, it's responding to our readings. It's almost like it knows what we're thinking, or what we fear." I nodded slowly. The feeling was mutual. The dreadnought seemed to be watching us just as intently as we were watching it. Every maneuver we made, every flicker of our sensors, every single heartbeat aboard the Auriga seemed to be accounted for. It was as if our very existence was being weighed and measured, not by a machine, but by a consciousness that saw everything. And in that vast, silent space, we could only wait for what would happen next. The Auriga hummed softly beneath Kiro'Nath's feet, a reminder of their fragility in the presence of the colossal dreadnought looming outside. He leaned over the observation console, eyes fixed on the immense silhouette that had drifted into their sector with the inevitability of a storm. The dreadnought's surface shimmered in the distant starlight, as if it were breathing, a living monument to human ingenuity. Kiro'Nath's mind raced. They had received its message. "Do not fear. We remember peace." Simple words, yet they carried a weight impossible to measure. A declaration, a warning, and a reassurance, all intertwined in a single sentence that resonated across space and into the human heart. He could feel it in the bridge's air, an almost tangible pulse of empathy. "Sir," Daly's voice broke through his thoughts. "They're broadcasting again. Subspace, directional. It's more than a message. It's like data, but in a form we don't recognize. The AI says it's structured, deliberate, almost intelligent." Kiro'Nath nodded, his jaw tight. "Let it through. Record everything. Don't attempt to decode yet. Let it speak. In its own language first." The bridge crew obeyed, hands flying across consoles, the room alive with tension. Every sensor reading, every flicker of light on the dreadnought, every fluctuation of energy felt deliberate, like a dialogue not of words, but of presence. The humans aboard the frigate had no choice but to listen. Kiro'Nath closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. This was the unknown. The Auriga was tiny, insignificant, yet here they were, actors in a scene scripted centuries ago by minds far greater than theirs. And still, he couldn't quell the instinctive human hope rising within him, the certainty that curiosity, courage, and empathy might just be enough to bridge the abyss. "Sir," Reza said quietly, "the pattern, it's almost like it's waiting for something. Responding to us, maybe?" Kiro'Nath's hand hovered over the comm panel. Could he dare? Could humanity reach across the void and meet what was already theirs by blood, by design? Protocol screamed restraint. Instinct screamed courage. He pressed the intercom. "This is Lieutenant Kiro'Nath, acting commander aboard the Auriga. We acknowledge your presence. We welcome your message." The response was immediate, soft, yet unmistakable. Subspace pulses translated into an audible tone. "Your courage is noted. You have ventured far from home, yet you stand steady. Do not fear. We seek only recognition." Kiro'Nath's heart hammered. Recognition. Not control. Not conquest. Recognition. Humans existed in legend and myth across the galaxy, lost, scattered, feared, and admired, and here, in the emptiness of unclaimed space, humanity acknowledged itself in a form both tangible and unimaginable. Daly leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. "Sir, they're showing something. A map? A projection?" The observation screen shifted. The stars outside bent, as if the void itself were folding. Across the emptiness, patterns of light coalesced, forming constellations and points of reference, both familiar and unfamiliar. And at their center, a highlighted route, a path traced across uncharted space. "They're guiding us," Kiro'Nath murmured. They want us to see something, to follow." A tremor of fear rose, sharp and instinctive. They were fragile, insignificant against the dreadnought. Yet curiosity burned brighter than fear, a human flame that had carried their kind across centuries of void, plague, and war. Kiro'Nath gritted his teeth. "Prepare to follow. Maintain distance. Engage sensors in passive mode. No sudden maneuvers." The dreadnought shifted slightly, like a living thing acknowledging consent. The stars flowed around it, and the Auriga felt itself pulled gently into a current, not of engines, but of presence. Kiro'Nath's mind turned inward. He remembered every lesson drilled into him at the academy. Measure, observe, anticipate. But here, knowledge alone wouldn't suffice. Here, humanity's ancient traits, courage, empathy, ingenuity, and faith, would be their only guides. Minutes, or was it hours, passed. The route extended before them, winding through uncharted sectors, revealing clusters of stellar phenomena, asteroid belts, and strange energy signatures. Kiro'Nath felt the awe that came from knowing the galaxy was vaster, stranger, and more beautiful than any textbook or legend could contain. Daly leaned closer, whispering, "Sir, they're showing us history. Their log. Human history. From Earth. From the colonies. From before the wars." Kiro'Nath's chest tightened. Images and data streamed across their consoles, sequences of human achievement, failure, courage, and sacrifice, wars fought, lives lost, innovations achieved against impossible odds. The humans who built this dreadnought had not forgotten their roots, and here they were, reminding these young frontier soldiers of what it meant to endure. Riza broke the silence. "Sir, it's overwhelming. The scale, the detail. It's almost like they're saying, 'We remember you.'" Kiro'Nath swallowed, his jaw tight. A subtle warmth bloomed in his chest, a mix of fear, pride, and the quietest echo of faith. Not luck, not accident. Someone, or something, had guided them here. He realized the dreadnought's patience was deliberate. It tested nothing. It commanded nothing. It simply existed as a mirror of humanity, a monument of restraint and power intertwined. And in that reflection, Kiro'Nath saw the path forward. Not conquest, not submission, not domination, but understanding. "Maintain course," he said finally. "Follow the route, observe, learn. We will meet them if it is their will." Daly and Reza nodded. The crew moved with silent reverence, each action measured, each glance at the viewport a mix of awe and trepidation. Humanity itself had returned across the void. And here they were, witnesses to its quiet power. And then, a new pulse from the dreadnought, different from before. Warm, deliberate, almost maternal. A resonance that seemed to seep into their minds rather than just their sensors. Kiro'Nath felt it like a touch, gentle but firm, guiding not just the ship, but his thoughts, his fears, his doubts. Somewhere in the deep void, the faintest whisper of understanding echoed. Courage is recognition. Strength is restraint. Humanity endures. Kiro'Nath let the words sink in. He felt a subtle weight lift, replaced by a profound clarity. The galaxy had not just paused, it had offered them a bridge, and to cross it they needed more than machines, more than training. They needed the indomitable human spirit. The Auriga followed the lighted path, fragile but resolute, dwarfed by the dreadnought but buoyed by something far stronger than firepower. Faith, curiosity, will. And somewhere deep in the crew's minds, the quietest realization surfaced. The frontier was no longer empty. Something vast, intelligent, and human waited at the other end. Kiro'Nath closed his eyes briefly, breathing in the silent gravity of the moment. We are not alone. And perhaps we never were. The Auriga drifted along the path laid out by the dreadnought, its hull dwarfed by the vastness outside. Stars bent subtly, streams of light folding as though space itself were curving to reveal something hidden. Kiro'Nath felt the hum of the ship beneath his boots, a steady rhythm that seemed almost alive, resonating with the silent pulse of the dreadnought ahead. Every fiber of his being was alert. Curiosity, fear, and the faintest echo of reverence warred within him. "Sir," Daly whispered from the sensor station, "I'm detecting anomalies, electromagnetic fluctuations, subspace distortions. The path, it's not natural. It's engineered." Kiro'Nath leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the displays. Lines of energy, flowing like liquid light, traced across the void, guiding them. The sensation was disorienting, yet magnetic. An invisible hand pulling them deeper into the unknown. Engineering or magic? Reza muttered under his breath, half joking, but his voice carried awe. Kiro'Nath allowed himself a small smile. Something older than both, perhaps. Or something human. The corridor widened as they advanced. Meteoroids hung suspended in microgravity fields, shimmering with subtle illumination. Streams of plasma arced across empty space, tethered in impossible geometries. And through it all, the dreadnought moved like a silent shepherd, its hull glowing faintly, each pulse of light corresponding to the Auriga's movements. Kiro'Nath couldn't shake the feeling of being observed, not by sensors, not by machinery, but by thought. The dreadnought was alive in a way that defied logic. Its presence was deliberate yet patient, testing humanity's response without coercion, demanding nothing but attention. "Sir," Daly said, voice tight. "The readings, it's like it's communicating through the environment itself. Energy, light, almost emotion. It's responding to our thoughts, to our intent." Kiro'Nath's chest tightened. That realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. Humans had built machines, sure, but this was no mere machine. This was a manifestation of collective genius, ingenuity, and willpower amplified across centuries. He could almost sense the minds behind it, humans who had transcended ordinary limitations yet remained bound by the essence of humanity: restraint, empathy, and purpose. "Keep sensors focused," Kiro'Nath instructed. "Observe. Do not interfere. We learn by watching." Minutes, or was it hours, passed in silence, broken only by the hum of the Auriga and the subtle shifts of the dreadnought. Then came the first challenge. A field of swirling particles, bright and unstable, appeared ahead. Their trajectory was chaotic, yet carefully contained within invisible boundaries. Daly's voice rose in alarm. "Sir, we can't plot a course through this. It's unpredictable. It could tear the ship apart." Kiro'Nath studied the phenomenon. The field was dangerous, yes, but it moved as if aware of their presence. The instinct to flee warred with the instinct to understand. He exhaled slowly. We don't run, we navigate. Careful, precise adjustments. Think, not react. The crew obeyed. Every movement calculated, every maneuver deliberate. The Auriga slipped between the luminous tendrils of energy like a dancer threading through a storm. Sparks of light brushed against the hull. Harmless, but illuminating alien textures and colors that no human eyes had ever catalogued. Daly's eyes widened. It's like it's testing us. Or guiding us. Kiro'Nath nodded. That was exactly it. The dreadnought wasn't aggressive. It wasn't threatening. It was observing humanity's ability to adapt, to act wisely under pressure, to remain courageous when fear screamed. This was a test, not of firepower, but of character. Hold steady, Kiro'Nath murmured. His own hands trembled slightly. This was no ordinary encounter. He felt the smallest echo of prayer rise in him. Not for himself, not for victory, but for guidance. A quiet hope that they would act rightly, that the human spirit would rise to meet this impossible moment. The field parted, and ahead, the corridor opened into a vast expanse. Kiro'Nath could barely comprehend it. Massive structures floated in the void, their geometry alien yet somehow familiar. Light played across surfaces with impossible fluidity, revealing intricate mosaics, inscriptions in forgotten Terran scripts, and symbols that resonated with a sense of purpose. They built this? Riza breathed, jaw slack. Daly shook his head, eyes wide. It's centuries of human knowledge, condensed, their history, their culture, their essence, and yet it's not just documentation, it's alive, communicating, guiding us. Kiro'Nath felt awe swell within him. The dreadnought had led them here, through dangers and uncertainties, to reveal the essence of humanity, its ingenuity, its perseverance, its capacity for restraint, and its ability to survive against impossible odds. And yet, there was no arrogance in this revelation. Only patience, only observation. He realized, almost in a whisper, that the dreadnought's gift was subtle, understanding that power without restraint was meaningless, that the galaxy, vast and indifferent, required more than technology to traverse. It required courage, empathy, and wisdom. And as they floated in that luminous corridor, surrounded by the echoes of human achievement and the quiet presence of something larger than themselves, Kiro'Nath understood something fundamental. This was not a journey of conquest. This was a journey of recognition. Somewhere, faint but undeniable, a quiet presence touched his consciousness. Not loud, not visible, but vast, balanced, merciful, just. God, perhaps, in the simplest definition. The quiet intelligence behind creation, the unseen force ensuring that courage, restraint, and human will could shine even across light years. Prepare to dock, Kiro'Nath finally said. We're being invited to enter their space. The crew moved with reverent precision, following the dreadnought's guidance. And as the Auriga drifted closer to one of the massive structures, Kiro'Nath felt a tremor of excitement and fear. They were about to step into the presence of human ingenuity magnified beyond comprehension, and whatever waited there would demand courage beyond mere protocol. Daly glanced at him, voice trembling. Sir, do you think they'll speak directly? Kiro'Nath's jaw tightened. If they do, we listen, not as soldiers, not as explorers, but as humans meeting humans, respectfully, carefully, fully aware of the magnitude of what stands before us. And somewhere in the infinite dark, the dreadnought's pulse seemed to echo a quiet affirmation. We remember humanity. And now, we watch them remember themselves. The corridor ahead shimmered, alive with energy and light. Kiro'Nath inhaled deeply. Every fiber of his being knew that the next step would change everything. The unknown waited, patient, vast, and imbued with the subtle certainty of divine order. And in the silence of the bridge, the faintest collective breath rose from the crew. Awe, fear, hope, all coiled tightly in the human heart. The Auriga glided forward, the corridor of luminous energy contracting and expanding as if breathing. My stomach churned with a mix of dread and anticipation, and I knew every officer aboard our patrol frigate felt the same tension, that blend of exhilaration and the quiet terror of facing something far beyond our comprehension. "Sir," Daly said, his voice tight, "the readings, they're inconsistent. Gravity, subspace fields, energy flows, nothing here conforms to any law we know." I nodded slowly. "That's the point," I murmured. "We're not just observing. We're learning. Humanity in ways we've never imagined. And yet, we must remain cautious. One wrong move and this corridor, this path, could crush us." In the distance, the dreadnought's massive shadow shifted, a patient presence guiding us with subtle pulses. It didn't rush. It didn't command. It simply existed, a silent sentinel ensuring that every decision aboard the Auriga was deliberate, human, and thoughtful. Then the first direct communication arrived, not through subspace pulses this time, not through symbols or light patterns, but through voice. "Lieutenant Kiro'Nath, welcome to the heart of what was once ours. You have journeyed far, with courage, patience, and care. We observe your choices, and they speak well of humanity." I froze, my hand resting lightly on the console. I swallowed hard, my voice catching as I responded. Thank you. We've followed the path you laid. We seek understanding, not conflict." The reply was immediate, gentle, yet precise. "Conflict is irrelevant where understanding exists. But the unknown tests even the bravest hearts. Prepare yourself." My pulse quickened. The dreadnought wasn't just a vessel. It was a living archive, a guardian, a bridge across centuries. It had drawn us here not to intimidate, but to reveal the essence of humanity itself. And now we were entering the core, the very heart of its design. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast expanse, a void within the void. Massive structures floated in the starlight, their surfaces etched with histories, achievements, failures, and triumphs of humanity. I recognized Terran architecture, grand, functional, elegant, but it was interwoven with alien geometry that enhanced rather than obscured it. "Sir," Reza whispered, awe threading her voice. It's like we're inside the soul of humanity. Every achievement, every struggle, it's here, preserved." I swallowed hard. It's not just preserved. It's alive. Every decision, every act of courage, it resonates here, the dreadnought. It's more than a ship. It's the memory of humanity itself. Daly's fingers flew over the sensor controls, struggling to quantify the impossible. "Sir, the energy fields, they're responding to us, to our thoughts. It's interactive. We can't control it, but it reacts to our intent." I exhaled slowly. That subtle guidance, that reflection of human intent. It was what we had needed all along, not rules, not directives, but a mirror, showing what humanity could be when courage, ingenuity, and faith aligned. "Maintain position," I said, my voice steady. "Observe, learn, and remember, we represent all of humanity here. One careless action could echo across the galaxy." The crew moved with careful reverence, the ship's thrusters whispering in the silent expanse. We floated toward a central structure immense and awe-inspiring. Panels shimmered with data, flickering across unknown spectra. A faint hum vibrated through the Auriga, a resonance that seemed almost sentient. And then, the first human figure appeared. Not on our ship, but projected in the corridor. A holographic image, a Terran officer, resplendent in uniform yet ethereal, as if time and space had folded just to preserve them here. "Lieutenant Kiro'Nath," the figure said, their voice calm, imbued with a quiet authority that transcended time. You have demonstrated the patience, courage, and ingenuity that define our species. This is the legacy of humanity. Not the wars, not the politics, not the fleeting struggles, but the will to endure, to adapt, and to choose restraint when power allows for destruction. I felt a tremor of awe run through me. The figure was human, yet carried the gravitas of centuries, the distilled essence of every human choice that had built this ship, this corridor, this archive. We are honored, I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. We seek only to learn, to understand what you have preserved, and to honor it. Then observe, the figure said. Learn not just with your eyes or sensors, but with your mind, your will, and your heart. Humanity survives not by chance but by ingenuity, empathy, and faith. By courage measured against fear and wisdom tempered with restraint. You are now part of this continuum, but your choices will echo beyond this encounter. Choose well. The holographic figure faded, leaving only the ancient structures and the dreadnought looming in its patient silence. I felt the weight of responsibility both crush and elevate me simultaneously. Here at the heart of human legacy, the frontier was not measured by distance or danger, but by the strength of character. Daly exhaled audibly. Sir, it's overwhelming. Every system, every construct. It's like the sum total of human potential. I nodded. Yes, and it is ours to honor, to continue, and to protect. We do not conquer. We do not destroy. We remember, and we act with wisdom. The dreadnought shifted slightly, immense and unreadable, yet its intent was clear. Observation, guidance, preservation. And now we had arrived at the moment of decision. To step closer, to interact, to trust that human ingenuity and empathy could rise to meet the impossible. A soft whisper of a prayer escaped my lips, involuntary but sincere. This wasn't luck, not chance. Someone wanted us to witness this. The echo of faith intertwined with courage, a subtle recognition of a force beyond comprehension guiding us, quietly ensuring balance and mercy. Prepare to interface, I said. We're stepping into the heart of their legacy, and we do so as humans, imperfect, yes, but steadfast, empathetic, and determined. And the crew moved with silent precision. The Auriga approached the massive central structure, our sensors glowing as they aligned with energy conduits and holographic interfaces. Every pulse of light, every flicker of resonance, seemed to acknowledge us, respond to our intent, and test our resolve. And in that moment I understood. The dreadnought had not simply survived. Humanity had survived, and now it was our turn to prove that courage, empathy, and faith could endure across the void. The bridge was silent, each crew member holding their breath. Outside, the dreadnought loomed, immense and patient. And somewhere in the infinite darkness I felt a quiet presence, vast, merciful, and just, a subtle force threading meaning into the cosmos, ensuring that human courage was not wasted, and that the frontier was alive with possibility. The Auriga hovered in the vast expanse of the central structure, a fragile human vessel dwarfed by the dreadnought's colossal presence. Kiro'Nath stood at the bridge console, palms pressed lightly against the cool surface, as the ship's sensors fed a cascade of incomprehensible data. Light flowed along energy conduits that defied the laws they knew. Holographic patterns shifted in ways that suggested thought, not mechanism. Every pulse seemed purposeful, alive, and intimately connected to the humans who had built this monument across space and time. Sir, Daly murmured, voice tight with awe. The interface. It's responding to us, not in commands or code, but in understanding. It's almost intuitive. Kiro'Nath's eyes narrowed. Intuitive, like a human mind. Exactly, sir, but amplified, collective. It's like it knows what we want to know before we ask. He exhaled slowly. That was the essence of the dreadnought. Not raw power, not indiscriminate authority, but the distilled ingenuity of humanity magnified into a living archive. And now, they were being invited to navigate it, not as soldiers or explorers, but as heirs to the legacy it preserved. Kiro'Nath activated the auxiliary control panel, allowing the Auriga to interface directly with the dreadnought systems. Streams of energy and data flowed into their ship, holographic projections materializing in the bridge air. Schematics of long-lost Terran technology, maps of star systems humanity had colonized centuries ago, and records of triumphs and failures alike. Every projection seemed purposeful, revealing lessons rather than secrets. "Sir, it's teaching us," Daly whispered, almost reverently. "Not instructions, not commands. Lessons, human history, distilled into strategy, ethics, and ingenuity." Kiro'Nath nodded, awed. The realization settled deep in his chest. This was not just first contact. It was mentorship across time, across the void, and across generations. Humanity itself had returned not with fire or conquest, but with the quiet strength of restraint and wisdom. And yet, the dreadnought was not without its tests. A sequence of energy fields shifted suddenly, forming intricate patterns around the Auriga. Sensors warned of instability, shifts that could crush a small ship if misjudged. Daly's fingers hovered over the controls, uncertainty etched into his face. "Sir, what do we do?" Kiro'Nath studied the patterns, noting subtle variations in timing pulses. "We don't react blindly. Observe, predict, adjust. Use ingenuity, human ingenuity." The ship responded, almost as if it sensed his intent. They navigated through the shifting fields with careful precision, aligning thrusters with the rhythm of the energy flows. Each successful maneuver caused the projections to shimmer, a faint acknowledgement from the dreadnought. Kiro'Nath felt a surge of pride and awe. Humanity had survived not through brute force, but through adaptability, creativity, and willpower, and now the dreadnought was testing whether that spirit still lived in those who followed. "Sir, it's communicating differently now," Daly said, pointing at the main projection. Symbols appeared, forming sequences that Kiro'Nath instinctively understood, not through language but through reasoning, intuition, and empathy. The dreadnought was guiding them toward comprehension, showing patterns, revealing solutions, but never dictating action. Kiro'Nath allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. This was the essence of humanity, the balance between knowledge and freedom, power and restraint, action and understanding. He felt the faintest whisper of something greater, an order beyond comprehension, a subtle divinity threading sense and mercy through the cosmos. The projection shifted again, revealing a complex network of colonies, communication arrays, and warships, all traced in exquisite detail. He recognized some systems from Terran history, others long forgotten, yet all connected by an intricate lattice of human ingenuity. This is incredible," Reza whispered. "It's not just information. It's legacy. Every choice, every act of courage, every sacrifice, preserved here." Kiro'Nath's gaze swept over the data, absorbing not just facts but context, emotion, and consequence. Humanity's triumphs were not accidental. They were earned through courage, empathy, and ingenuity. And now the dreadnought was allowing them to touch that triumph, to learn from it, to inherit it, but only if they proved worthy. Daly hesitated, eyes wide. "Sir, it's asking for a decision, a choice. I think it wants to know if we understand, if we'll act wisely." Kiro'Nath felt the weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders. This was no mere test of skill. It was a test of character. The dreadnought demanded not obedience, not submission, but the recognition that power without restraint was meaningless. He exhaled, steadying himself. "Then we act wisely," he said, voice firm. "We demonstrate courage tempered with understanding, ingenuity guided by empathy. That is how humanity survives. A pulse of light ran through the projections, responding to his intent. The energy fields stabilized, the pathways illuminated, and the dreadnought seemed to breathe, acknowledging the correctness of their choices. Kiro'Nath felt a tremor of awe. Somewhere deep in his chest, a quiet voice whispered, "Not luck. Not chance. Someone wanted us to live. Someone wanted us to learn." The Auriga floated within the heart of human ingenuity, dwarfed and yet empowered. The dreadnought remained patient, immense, a sentinel and teacher, offering the lessons of centuries without coercion. Kiro'Nath realized that first contact was more than communication. It was communion, a meeting of minds across time and space, grounded in the essence of human courage and restraint. He glanced at his crew. Eyes reflected fear, awe, and determination. They were human, small, fragile, but indomitable. And here, at the core of the dreadnought, they could feel the weight of humanity's potential, waiting to be embraced and carried forward. "Prepare to continue deeper," Kiro'Nath said. "We follow, but we observe. We learn, but we act, and we honor what has been preserved." The dreadnought's hull shimmered faintly, almost imperceptibly, a subtle affirmation of trust, guidance, and the expectation of wisdom. Kiro'Nath exhaled slowly, letting the weight of the encounter settle. The journey was far from over, but humanity had survived again. Not by luck, not by power, but by will, ingenuity, and the courage to act rightly in the presence of the impossible. And in the quiet of the bridge, the crew realized that they were not just voyagers, they were inheritors. Inheritors of courage, empathy, and the indomitable human spirit that had endured across millennia. The Auriga drifted deeper into the labyrinthine expanse of the dreadnought's domain. The central structure stretched endlessly, each corridor of light and energy revealing layers of human ingenuity, history, and subtle wisdom. Kiro'Nath felt the weight of every decision pressing against him, each pulse of the dreadnought resonating in tandem with the human heart aboard the ship. Daly's fingers hovered above the console, tense. "Sir, the next sequence, it's not just information. It's a scenario, a simulation. It's testing us." Kiro'Nath swallowed, recognizing the pattern immediately. The dreadnought did not merely record the past, it prepared for the future. Humanity had built this vessel to challenge minds, to teach restraint, ingenuity, and courage, and now, they were the students. "What kind of test?" he asked, his voice low, steadying his own rising pulse. Daly hesitated, his eyes wide as he stared at the console. "It's hypothetical. A hostile fleet appears on an uncharted system. Civilian colonies are in jeopardy. We have the power to destroy them instantly, or find a solution that minimizes casualties. It's a moral puzzle, a strategic trial. Sir, it wants our choice." Kiro'Nath's jaw tightened. This was no simulation in the ordinary sense. Every instinct screamed caution. One wrong decision could have consequences he couldn't even imagine, but the dreadnought's tone, the silent rhythm of its presence suggested it did not seek obedience. It sought judgment, wisdom, humanity. He turned to the crew, his gaze sweeping across the bridge, locking eyes with each officer. "Listen," he said, his voice firm, cutting through the palpable tension. "We are not here to impress a machine. We are here to honor what humanity represents. Courage, ingenuity, empathy. We choose carefully, and we act deliberately." Reza exhaled softly, her voice trembling slightly. "Sir, it's overwhelming. Every option, every outcome, it's alive, responsive. We feel the weight of each decision." Kiro'Nath nodded, his expression grim but resolute. That weight was precisely the point. Humanity's survival had never been guaranteed. Every victory, every innovation, every act of courage had been measured against uncertainty, against fear, against the unknown. And now they were being tested in its purest form. Choice, Options, Kiro'Nath muttered, his eyes scanning the holographic projections that bloomed in the center of the bridge. A hostile fleet, represented by stark red icons, approached a cluster of civilian colonies, faster than conventional sensors could track. The colonies lay in vulnerable orbit, defenseless. Weapon systems glowing in ominous green could eliminate the threat in a heartbeat, but the simulations showed catastrophic collateral destruction. Every course of action presented a terrifying risk. Every choice carried an impossible weight. He closed his eyes briefly, centering himself, shutting out the noise and the fear. Not luck. Not chance. Someone wanted us to act rightly. The thought was a faint whisper, a subtle and vast presence that threaded through his mind, a quiet intelligence behind creation, guiding his courage and his judgment. He opened his eyes, his resolve hardened. "Daily," he said, his voice calm but resolute, a beacon in the storm of uncertainty. "Calculate trajectories not to destroy but to protect. Find every non-lethal advantage. Evade, intercept, misdirect. Civilian lives are paramount. Our strength is restraint, not firepower." Daly's fingers flew across the console, his movements a blur. Calculations streamed across the screen faster than thought, lines of code and energy weaving intricate patterns. "Sir, there's a solution. Extremely narrow, but if we adjust gravitic fields and use decoys, we could reroute the fleet without a single casualty." A surge of adrenaline, of pure, unadulterated hope shot through Kiro'Nath's pulse. That was it, the essence of humanity distilled into a single brilliant maneuver. The courage to face the impossible, the ingenuity to create solutions where none seemed to exist, and the empathy to preserve life even when annihilation was the easy path. "Do it," he ordered, his voice ringing with authority. "And every crew member, double-check your systems. Every action must be precise. No mistakes." The bridge became a whirlwind of focused activity. Systems hummed with newfound purpose. Thrusters whispered as they made microscopic adjustments, and the holographic simulations flickered, playing out their desperate, elegant plan. Time stretched, each second a heartbeat amplified across the silent void of space. The fate of millions, simulated or not, rested on their shoulders. Then, the impossible occurred. The hostile fleet, guided and nudged by their calculated interventions, shifted its course. The red icons on the display veered away from the civilian colonies, flowing around them like a river diverted by an unseen dam. The colonies were untouched. The threat dissipated, neutralized without a single shot fired, without a single life lost. The crew exhaled collectively, a wave of relief so powerful it was almost a physical force, uncoiling the tension that had gripped the bridge like a vice. A deep, resonant pulse ran through the dreadnought, a subtle vibration that reverberated into the Auriga's hull. And then, a voice, calm, deliberate, ancient and powerful. It filled the bridge not through speakers but in their minds. "You have acted with courage, ingenuity, and restraint. You have preserved life when destruction was easy. You have demonstrated the essence of humanity. We recognize you." Kiro'Nath's chest tightened. The words were not just praise, they were affirmation. Recognition across centuries and light years, a quiet acknowledgement that the human spirit endured, unbroken, still burning bright. Daly exhaled shakily, slumping back in his chair. "Sir, we did it without destroying anyone." Kiro'Nath allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible smile. "That is the measure of strength," he said softly, his voice filled with pride. "Not in what we can destroy, but in what we choose to preserve." Reza looked out the main viewport at the silent, colossal structure of the dreadnought, her voice hushed with awe. "Sir, it's almost like they're showing us what humanity can be. Our best, not our worst." Kiro'Nath nodded, the truth of her words settling deep within him. That was precisely it. The dreadnought was not a weapon, not a test of might. It was a teacher, a guardian of a legacy, a reflection of what humans could achieve when courage, empathy, and ingenuity aligned. Somewhere, Deep in the silence of space, Kiro'Nath felt that faint echo of divinity again. Not loud, not commanding, but patient, just, and vast. A presence that whispered through action, through choice, through courage and restraint. Humanity survives because it chooses rightly, even against fear and uncertainty. "Record the sequence," he said, his voice regaining its command. "Every maneuver, every calculation. These are lessons for future generations. And prepare to move deeper. The dreadnought is not finished with us yet. Its lessons continue." The crew moved with a quiet reverence, a new understanding dawning in their eyes. The test was not over. Perhaps it never would be. Humanity's legacy demanded not just survival, but the courage to act wisely in the face of the impossible, time and time again. And in the heart of the dreadnought's domain, Kiro'Nath understood the simple, profound truth. Survival alone was not enough. True greatness came from courage tempered by empathy, ingenuity guided by restraint, and faith that even in the darkest void, someone, something, was guiding them toward understanding. The Auriga continued forward, a fragile but resolute vessel, dwarfed by the ancient dreadnought yet imbued with a strength far greater than its engines or weapons could ever measure. The human spirit itself, unbroken, indomitable, and finally recognized across the stars. The Auriga drifted into a vast chamber, the very heart of the dreadnought's domain. Light, energy, and shadow intertwined in intricate patterns that seemed to defy ordinary comprehension. The bridge was bathed in a soft luminescence that pulsed in rhythm with the ship itself, as if space were alive and aware. Kiro'Nath stood at the forefront, his eyes wide, absorbing the sheer scale, the depth, the magnitude of human achievement compressed into this single, silent space. Daly's voice was a hushed whisper beside him. "Sir, I don't think I can fully comprehend it. Every structure, every projection, it's alive, reacting, teaching, guiding." Kiro'Nath nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the spectacle. "Not just teaching, Daly, communicating. Humanity in its purest essence. Every choice, every success, every failure, preserved and amplified. And now it's ours to witness and to understand." Reza stepped closer, pointing to a shimmering projection that depicted a swirling galaxy of events. "Sir, look at this. It's our history, colonies, wars, treaties, but also moments of courage, ingenuity, faith. Every act that defined humanity is here." Kiro'Nath felt the immense weight of it all. This wasn't just documentation. This was a living archive, a monument not of conquest, but of restraint, creativity, and empathy. He began to realize the dreadnought itself was more than a vessel. It was a guardian of human potential, a teacher across centuries, a reflection of what humans could achieve when ingenuity, courage, and morality aligned. Then, the air, or what felt like air, shifted. A faint resonance filled the bridge, a vibration that was subtle yet insistent. Kiro'Nath's chest tightened. The dreadnought was not just observing, they were being addressed directly, through presence rather than voice. "Lieutenant Kiro'Nath," a calm, resonant voice began, its source seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You have navigated the trials with courage, ingenuity, and empathy, but now you must witness the culmination of human potential. Not for power, not for war, but for understanding, stewardship, and restraint." Kiro'Nath's pulse quickened. The projection before them shifted, transforming, revealing the core of the dreadnought's domain. A lattice of energy and knowledge, vast beyond reckoning. Within it were records, simulations, and archives of human civilization. Technologies, achievements, ethical deliberations, and the subtle decisions that had preserved life across centuries. Daly whispered, awe-stricken. "It's a library, a legacy, but alive. And it's communicating, not just information, but intent, morality, choices." Kiro'Nath nodded, his own awe mirroring his subordinates. This was the heart of human essence, magnified, crystallized, and preserved for eternity. The dreadnought had survived, yes, but it existed for a purpose far grander than mere existence. It existed to ensure that humanity's greatest traits endured: ingenuity, courage, empathy, and the moral clarity to make the right choice even when faced with impossible odds. And then came the challenge. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Kiro'Nath felt it in every fiber of his being. A new scenario was projected in real time, a simulation of immense consequence and moral weight. A human colony faced an existential threat from an unknown force, and its survival depended not on weapons or firepower, but on choice, strategy, and ingenuity. "Sir, it's testing us again," Daly said, his voice tense. "Not for skill, but for judgment. Moral clarity." Kiro'Nath swallowed, the gravity of the situation settling upon him. This was the true essence of humanity's strength. Not the victories of technology, but the triumphs of human will, empathy, and intelligence. He felt a quiet pulse of something greater threading through his thoughts, guiding his intuition and fortifying his courage. This wasn't luck. This wasn't chance. Someone, or something, wanted them to act rightly. He studied the scenario, analyzing every variable, every option, every moral consequence. The easy path was to fight, to destroy, to use overwhelming force. But that wasn't the human way. Not the best of it anyway. "We choose restraint," he said finally, his voice ringing with conviction on the silent bridge. "We protect life, even when destruction is easy. We act with ingenuity, creativity, and courage. That is humanity's true measure." Daly and Reza nodded in unison, their hands flying across their consoles. They began aligning systems, projecting solutions, and executing a plan that relied not on brute force, but on cunning, empathy, and collaboration. They would outthink the threat, not outgun it. The simulation unfolded with tense precision. Each choice was deliberate, each calculation a testament to human ingenuity. They didn't fire a single shot. Instead, they used their knowledge of physics, their understanding of the enemy's nature, to create a diversion, a harmless trap that neutralized the threat without causing any loss of life on either side. When the threat passed, when the colonies were saved without a single casualty, the dreadnought pulsed once, a subtle vibration that resonated in the very bones of the Auriga, and the voice returned, filled with a sense of approval. "You have acted with wisdom, courage, and restraint. You honor humanity's legacy. And now you are recognized, not as explorers, but as inheritors." Kiro'Nath exhaled slowly, a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The weight of centuries pressed down and lifted in equal measure. This was the culmination of human potential, the ability to face the unknown, make moral choices, protect life, and act with ingenuity. It wasn't about perfection, not about omnipotence, but about being human at its finest. "Sir, we did it," Reza whispered, his voice thick with emotion. We passed. Or understood. I'm not sure which is more profound." Kiro'Nath allowed himself a small, genuine smile. "Both," he said. "Understanding is the greatest victory. Courage tempered with wisdom, ingenuity guided by empathy. That is what we inherit, and what we must carry forward." And in the quiet of the bridge, he felt it again. A faint, subtle presence, vast, merciful, and just, threading meaning into the infinite void, not as a teacher, not as a commander, but as an unseen intelligence ensuring that courage, empathy, and restraint remained the guiding principles of humanity. Daly glanced at him, his voice soft. "Sir, do you think we're ready?" Kiro'Nath's eyes swept across the luminous lattice, the living archive of human triumph, the embodiment of centuries of courage and ingenuity. "We always were," he said. "We just needed to be reminded." The Auriga hovered in the heart of human legacy, fragile yet resolute, dwarfed by the dreadnought, but empowered by the very essence of humanity. And for the first time, Kiro'Nath understood the full measure of what they had encountered, the quiet, relentless, and enduring triumph of the human spirit, recognized across the stars and preserved in patience, restraint, and wisdom. The Auriga drifted in absolute silence, suspended at the very heart of the dreadnought's vast, silent domain. All around us, a luminous lattice of energy and memory stretched into infinity, an intricate, breathtaking monument to human ingenuity, courage, and perhaps most importantly, restraint. I stood at the bridge console, Kiro'Nath, my rank of lieutenant, feeling impossibly small in this moment, trying to absorb the sheer magnitude of what we had just witnessed. Every projection, every pulse of light, every resonant vibration humming through the dreadnought's ancient hull spoke of humanity's greatest triumph. Not a victory in warfare, not a conquest of stars, but the profound courage to choose what was right when destruction would have been so easy. Daly's voice beside me was a hushed, reverent whisper. "Sir, it's almost overwhelming. Every system, every record, it's all here. It's like we're touching the very essence of humanity itself." I nodded slowly, my eyes tracing the flowing patterns of light. "Yes," I agreed, my own voice quiet. "And the lesson is clear. True strength is measured not by what we can destroy, but by what we choose to preserve. The dreadnought hasn't just tested our skills, it has tested our character." As if in response, the dreadnought pulsed gently, an immense yet subtle wave of energy, a silent affirmation that we had understood its message. And then, that familiar voice returned, echoing not in our ears but in our minds. It was calm, resonant, filled with the quiet authority of centuries. "Lieutenant Kiro'Nath and the crew of the Auriga, you have navigated trials of courage, ingenuity, empathy, and restraint. You have acted in alignment with the principles that define humanity at its best. You are recognized, not for your power, but for your judgment, your will, and your moral clarity. Humanity endures because it chooses wisely, even when faced with fear and uncertainty." A shiver ran down my spine. This was recognition across light years, across centuries, for actions guided not by arrogance or ambition, but by intellect, empathy, and raw courage. I glanced at my crew. Their faces were a reflection of my own feelings, a mixture of awe, profound relief, and a deep, quiet pride. Reza, our comms officer, whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Sir, they trust us now, or they know we're worthy." "Not worthy," I corrected softly, the realization dawning on me. "Capable, responsible. Humanity survives not because we are perfect, but because we possess courage, ingenuity, empathy, and the restraint to act wisely when it matters most." Daly let out a long, slow breath, the weight of the moment finally settling upon him. "Sir, this will change everything. The knowledge, the guidance, we can preserve it. We can carry it forward. Humanity has hope." I nodded again, my gaze drifting past him to the infinite void beyond the viewport. Stars stretched across the blackness like silver threads woven into a cosmic tapestry, and for the first time in my entire life I felt I truly understood their significance. We were small, so fragile, practically insignificant by any cosmic standard. But our choices, our courage, and our ingenuity resonated far beyond our own perception. We were human, and that alone was something extraordinary. As this thought settled, a faint whisper of an idea, subtle yet vast, brushed against the edges of my mind. It was the quiet presence of something greater, an intelligence threading balance, mercy, and purpose through the cosmos itself. It wasn't a command, not a voice, but a feeling, a vast, ancient consciousness ensuring that courage, empathy, and wisdom would endure. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. Someone or something wanted us to understand. Someone wanted humanity to endure. I exhaled slowly, letting the quiet affirmation settle deep into my chest. The dreadnought had fulfilled its purpose. It had guided, tested, and ultimately preserved the very essence of human potential. And now, it was our turn. The Auriga would carry that knowledge, that spirit, back into the galaxy. "Prepare for departure," I said, my voice steady, carrying a quiet authority I didn't know I possessed until this moment. "We leave not with conquest but with understanding, not with fear, but with hope. Humanity has been reminded of its greatest strength, the courage to act rightly, even in the face of the impossible." The crew moved with a new, reverent precision, their movements fluid and certain as they aligned the systems for our return journey. The Auriga detached from the dreadnought's core, drifting back into open space. The corridor of light that had guided us in began to contract and fade, leaving our small patrol frigate suspended once more in the quiet void, dwarfed by the stars, but empowered by the resonance of human legacy. As our ship cleared the last shimmering field of the dreadnought's domain, a calm certainty settled over me. Humanity had faced the ultimate measure of itself and had emerged not unscathed, but enlightened, emboldened, and inspired. I looked at my crew again, their eyes reflecting a powerful mix of determination, wonder, and quiet joy. "We carry their legacy," I said softly, making sure they all could hear. "Not as soldiers, not as explorers, but as humans, courageous, creative, and steadfast. That is what will guide us into the unknown." Reza smiled faintly, her voice soft but resolute. "Sir, I think we finally understand. Humanity doesn't survive by power alone. It survives by will, by empathy, and by choosing to do the right thing when it matters most." I nodded, letting her words settle in the quiet of the bridge. Across the command deck, I could feel the same resonance in every crew member. A subtle, unshakable awareness that our actions, our choices, and our courage mattered far beyond this single moment in time. And somewhere, out there in the infinite dark, I knew a quiet presence lingered, vast and unseen, threading meaning, balance, and mercy into the fabric of the cosmos. It wasn't preaching, it wasn't judging, it was simply allowing human courage and ingenuity to shine on their own merits. The Auriga turned its nose toward uncharted space, a fragile and tiny vessel against the impossible expanse. Yet we carried something far larger than ourselves, the quiet, indomitable, and enduring human spirit. And in the silence of the void I whispered, almost to myself, a final, profound truth. We are human, and that is enough. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more tales from the vast expanse. Until next time, stay curious,